I was working across East Africa in post-conflict reconstruction. With 3 years of doing that, I realized that it wasn't for me. The biggest opportunity I saw was in tech, and I was really curious about how tech was having an impact across Africa. So I think it really clicked when I came back and traveled across the continent in 2022. I had this one post that went viral called the Paystack Mafia. It was basically I made this graphic of all the people who left Paystack to build their own companies, and this went crazy viral. Now it's time to do 2 things. One is go see what this can be and what this means. And then the second is figure out how to make money out of this. I decided to have get-togethers, just sort of tech safari gatherings. I thought this would be meetups of 10, 15 people. Across the events, over 100 people came to almost all of them. And I think that changed my perspective entirely. I was like, this is not just interesting writing or going viral. This is actually a community, and how do we serve this community? Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is the story of how I built Tech Safari into a media company with 85,000 followers and $49,000 in monthly revenue in 18 months.
Hey folks, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is PC Timmy. I'm a multifaceted creator, a marketing professional, and a teacher, and I'm passionate about growing people and growing businesses. See, the goal is that anybody who comes across me or any piece of my content is inspired and or motivated to get better in their business, in their career, and in their life. As you watch this video, like and comment and share to your friends and family if you like it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Enjoy this video, and I'll see you. Peace.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is the story of how I built Tech Safari into a media company with 85,000 followers and $49,000 in monthly revenue in 18 months. So Tech Safari is a media company covering tech in Africa and a community for people across African tech, both across African countries and globally, so in Europe and the US. And our revenue today is a split of events revenue, consulting revenue, media revenue, and other various side projects as well. I was working across East Africa in post-conflict reconstruction, which is basically how do you patch up countries after there's been a conflict or a war. Really interesting work. It was my dream job, and it was how, as Ethiopian diaspora, which I am, living in Australia, it's how I wanted to contribute back to the continent and sort of build a career in Africa. But after 3 years of doing that, I realized that it wasn't for me for a lot of reasons. And the biggest one that it was really, a lot of these initiatives didn't help that much. And I thought that there were way cooler, more impactful ways to have an impact across the continent. The biggest opportunity I saw was in tech. And I was really curious about how tech was having an impact across Africa. So I went and joined a friend to start a company from Australia, but served a lot of global users, particularly in Nigeria and education. And then along that journey, learned a lot about building a tech startup, raising money. And I think it really clicked when I came back and traveled across the continent in 2022. While I was doing that, I was capturing my learnings while I was living in Nigeria and Kenya and Rwanda, and just capturing things I was seeing and sort of sharing them on my LinkedIn because I thought it was interesting. And I thought that people across the globe would find that sort of content or those thoughts interesting, and I might learn something. And actually, people did find it really interesting. Here's this Australian guy who is speaking from his perspective, which is a global one, about tech in Africa. And it's in a very plain English way. So I actually completely understand what he's talking about. That's really interesting to me. And yeah, as I was sort of sharing my content, I had this one post that went viral called the Paystack Mafia. It was basically I made this graphic of all the people who exited, who left Paystack to build their own companies, and that Paystack was acquired by Stripe. And this went crazy viral. And that one day that it did go viral, I had a bunch of people who wanted to catch up, a bunch of founders who wanted to talk, a lot of people in media who wanted to catch up with me too. And I was like, this is really interesting because this to me is a story that is quite well known. A lot of people in this ecosystem know about Paystack and the alumni, but no one's told it in a simple way. And so maybe there's something missing here. And that's when I started to take the writing a lot more seriously. So I actually as I was traveling, I kept writing every day. And I decided that I would actually give this writing thing a shot. So I left the company I was at, and I moved back into my parents' place for 3 months and in their spare room, and just said, I'm gonna write every day, write a post every day about something new in African tech, and just see how it goes and see what happens. And if it goes well, awesome. And if it doesn't, I'll just go back into the job market and get a job. And that 3-month period was crazy because every day I would make a post, and they consistently just went viral. People really engaged with the content. They really liked it. And the whole focus was, how do I create the most relatable, most interesting, and the most informative content on African tech and put my own personality in it. So that was 3 months of just writing, and I was like, okay, there's something here. Like, we're seeing it. People are really engaging with this content. Now it's time to do two things. One is like, go see what this can be and what this means. And then the second is figure out how to make money out of this. So I left my parents' like spare room, and I flew to the US, and I went to San Francisco, and then DC, and then New York. And in these cities, I decided to have get-togethers, just sort of like tech safari gatherings, just to meet the people in the community and see, what they liked about the content, what they wanted to do, and like where there was opportunity. I thought this would be like meetups of 10, 15 people. Across the events, over 100 people came to almost all of them. And these are people who just knew me from online, from reading the newsletter. And I think that changed my perspective entirely. I was like, this is not just interesting writing or going viral. This is actually a community, and how do we serve this community? So that was kind of like an aha moment for me, just like turning this digital thing to something real and physical. And I think like maybe a lesson in that is that a lot of things can be digital and they can be online, but like you build so much more brand power and sort of like so much more value if you are someone who goes and meets people, like goes and meets your community and connects with them and is there physically. So yeah, that was sort of, that validated the idea. Next step was like, go make money. So at that point I had moved to Kenya, and I just settled down in Kenya. It's about a year ago now. And I was thinking about how do we really monetize this thing and grow it and like build a team. The ways that we looked at doing that in the beginning was we tried newsletter ad spots, which sucked. Like, they are just like terrible to sell and you have to sell frequently. We did editions on some companies, which we still do, and that's like a pretty cool way to deep dive into a company that we really like. But in terms of scalable model, it's not so scalable because you are competing with like a marketing budget within a company, and also you want to have creative freedom over your content, and so you don't want to have every edition as a paid edition. So we kind of hit a limit on the ceiling of that, and then so we looked at other things. These events that we were doing actually had really good attendance, and we started doing them in October. We did our first next one in Kenya, and we had over 200 people come. And that's when we realized, okay, this is great because a lot of people actually want to sponsor these and have access to attendees and connect with them and connect with our community. And they actually have really valuable products, services, free things for the community. So it's actually a match kind of made in heaven. And yeah, we started hosting events in Nairobi, but also in Cape Town. And then the next one was in Tanzania. And so we started realizing that we could build actually a pretty cool business doing events across the globe, meeting up with the community and bringing really cool partners to sponsor on board as well. That's one way that we sort of built up towards scaling the company. The next way that we realized we could do that was through consulting. A lot of other companies wanted to grow too, and we had used these tactics of content, community building, and events to really scale Tech Safari. So I spent a bunch of time with a handful of companies to figure out, hey, how can we help you scale? And how can I sort of be your CMO, like fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, for a while? And what we learned from that was there were some things that were very repeatable that we could actually do at scale. And one of them was content creation, and another one was community and growth sort of testing. And so we built a team around that. We got them into companies, supporting them with scale. And that's turned into our agency, which we now call Flywheel. And that's sort of a Tech Safari baby, but it's taking on customers, not just from our Tech Safari community, but globally as well, who are just interested in audience building. And this is a trend that we think is really exciting, right? Like finding a trend which is founders building personal brands and audiences, because that's really important, and making that really easy through a service which is almost like a subscription. And so that's sort of how we scaled our revenue as well. A few of the lessons from the monetization journey, as we went from kind of not much money and needing to make it work to scaling and building a team now of 9 people, was that a lot of the most valuable things that we did, we found just by sitting down with founders and potential people in our community that wanted to work with us and asking them, hey, what are your biggest problems? If you waved a magic wand, do you wish you could do in your marketing team? Or do you wish you could do in terms of growth or sales? Like, tell us about this. And from doing this with a lot of founders, we realized that, yeah, growth was a really big problem, and like scaling quickly was a big problem and something all startups wanted. But also, so is like this idea of growing an audience and building an audience. It takes a lot of time to build one. writing content every day. I mean, not everyone can move into their parents' house and like write every day, right? So how do you build a team that can support you to do that? And so that's where we landed on this insight that we could support other founders to do the same thing. Now, not everything worked. Not everything that we tried worked out. Things I did early on was I would actually join companies almost as their CMO fractionally and try to support them to scale. What happened was that it just took way too much time. You know, like being an employee in a company versus an agency are two very different things. And especially when it takes up your time, that's not really a sustainable business. And so the learning around that was I needed to build a team that could handle that. And a lot of like the growth in the last year, since we decided to start monetizing, has come from having incredible team members that can just take over projects or departments and completely handle them. So we can look at other places to grow. So with events, we have a team member who manages our events and all our key partners and makes sure that they run well, and I don't have to think about any of the logistics. With our media, we now have a managing editor and 2 writers who are able to write great content that's like on tone for Tech Safari, and I also don't need to think about that. And so this lets me step out and think about more big picture stuff, more vision stuff, and where to take the company. The other key thing that I've learned is like, I built all of the, the content, the community, the writing, the events, all of it myself. And I think I did it pretty quickly. 18 months isn't that, well, like in the beginning, the first like 6 months doing it solo is pretty good. I think the speed was okay, but I could have done it way faster if I'd brought on the right people in the beginning. And that's something that I do all the time now. It's like, okay, we want to build an agency. Who has built an agency before? That's the person we should hire, or that's the person we should talk to. Or you want to build a newsletter? Okay, who's done that before? How do we get that person on board? And I think one of the shortcuts is, it's harder with finite resources, but getting the right people on from the very start can be so crucial to scaling quickly and actually like hitting great milestones and moving faster. One of the interesting things that happened from building Tech Safari was that as a function of writing every day and being the person people see and read about, they also built a connection with me. And that's something that's very, very, very crucial when it comes to sales and growth. When people trust you, a lot of the things that need to happen around sales can kind of get skipped over, or like you can move through faster because there's already inbuilt trust. And so when it came to growth and sales, a lot of the people who we ended up working with actually came to us through our community and came to us through our channels. And yeah, there are definitely some people who we go and connect with, but in a lot of the time, the trust is already inbuilt just from the fact that we're really active in the ecosystem. And we're really focused on, providing value first with great content, great events that are free or like reasonably priced to attend. Do that at a really high standard, and now there's this sort of trust associated with the brand. This is also why I really encourage every founder or every business owner or really anyone who's serious about building their career, their job, etc., to write. Like it's simple. Writing is like, it takes time, but it is one of the biggest investments you can make. Building an audience is how we built the whole company and how we'll build our next few companies as well. And I think everyone can write about a topic that they're good at or they understand really well. And man, content can really travel the world, and that's how we built Tech Safari. When I started Tech Safari, we started with 3 months in mind. How do we get something going, get some movement, get some activity in the first 3 months and see if there's something here? At the start of this year, so 12 months into the journey, I thought about the next 4 years and where we want to go. And where we've landed is we want to be in the middle of Africa's tech ecosystem and help develop it through great content, events, and community. But we've also learned that what we've done across the continent, across Africa, can be done anywhere. And it can be done with building a great audience, creating great content, building a community around that, and then building services or products or businesses around those things, around those channels. And so that's what you can expect from us going forward. We've done it for tech across Africa and for events, but soon we'll be doing it for audience building itself. How do we build an amazing community of people who want to build their audience? We might do it across other verticals too. So really just exploring where else can we build great communities and build great products and services around them too. If you wanted to build a community the same way that I did and build a newsletter or a media company or whatever to build or scale a company, here's what I would do. I would sit down every day for 2 hours and write. I would make sure that I was posting every day or every 2 days on a social media platform and testing to see what works and what doesn't work, learning from that and then trying again and iterating. And I think that creating content, sharing content, going viral, these are all parts of the process of building a community and understanding what content people really like, and then going from there. If people really love content about, I don't know, dogs in the UK, and that's something that you build an audience around, how do you build a community for those people? And then how do you find out what their biggest problems are, and then build like products or services for those people? It's kind of a methodology you follow where great content leads to insights about a community or a user group, which leads to insights about a potential product or service. So to recap, I would sit down, I'd write every day, I'd be iterating and learning. So every time I realize something does well or doesn't do well, I learn from that, keep doing what works, cut out what doesn't, and keep pushing and like trying to understand your readers and why they like what you're creating. And then once you have some insights, see if you can do more for them. See if you can create a community, create like a resource like a newsletter or a blog or podcast, and really like serve that community through content, through valuable content. Yeah, and then from there, you have a lot of the ingredients to potentially build a product or service or interesting business. So that's how I built Techsafari. I hope it inspires you to write more, build a community, and build an audience. And do check out Techsafari at techsafari.io.